I am Mary, and I came here to tell you my story. So let's go. After driving 12 hours straight without stopping, with my hands shaking on the steering wheel and my heart full of guilt, I finally reached the house. The cold was cutting through my jacket, the wind was howling, and every second I got closer to the door, I felt my stomach twisting. I was scared, not because of the snow or the long drive, but because I didn't know if he would forgive me. Daniel, my husband, we had the worst fight of our lives a few days ago, and after I said something I'll never be proud of, he left. He didn't call, he didn't text, he just disappeared, and I knew exactly where he went. Our house in the mountains, the place he always escaped to when he wanted silence. I didn't even tell him I was coming. I just packed my bag, filled the tank, and drove 12 hours across the coldest storm of the year. I rehearsed every word I was going to say. I even bought his favorite chocolate at a gas station just to break the ice, literally, but none of that mattered, because the moment I opened the front door, all I could do was freeze. There on the floor right at the entrance was a pair of sneakers, but they weren't his. They were bigger than his feet, newer, and definitely not something Daniel would wear. I stood there for a moment, not moving, my brain trying to make excuses. Maybe he had a guest, maybe he bought new shoes, maybe I was just imagining things, but deep down I knew none of that made sense. Daniel never let people come to this house. Not even friends. This was his escape, his alone time, and he never ever left shoes out like that. My heart started racing, not because of the drive, not because of the cold, but because something was wrong, very wrong. I took a step inside, closed the door behind me slowly, and tried to stay quiet. The house was warm, the heater was on, the lights were dim, and there was a faint smell of coffee in the air, like someone had just made a fresh cup. And then I noticed it. A jacket I didn't recognize, hanging on the back of the chair, and a half-empty mug on the table. I called out, "Daniel." No answer. I said his name again. Nothing. I walked slowly toward the living room, every step heavier than the last, every breath harder to take, and then I saw his phone lying on the couch, screen facing up, with a message that had just come, and the name on the screen made my blood run cold, and what it said made everything worse. But wait, let me take you back, before that message, before the shoes, before the storm. Let me show you how everything started, and how I ended up here in the middle of nowhere, standing in my own house, feeling like a stranger. We weren't always like this, no. In fact, we were the couple people used to point at and say goals. We laughed a lot, we traveled, we cooked together, we had traditions like pancakes every Sunday and kissing under the mistletoe. Even when it wasn't Christmas, we had that kind of love that made everything else fade into the background. Or at least that's what I thought. When I met Daniel, it felt like the universe hit pause and played only our soundtrack. He had this calm, quiet confidence, and I had the chaos. And together it worked. He grounded me, and I lit him up, and when we got married, I really believed that we were unbreakable. But the truth is, love alone doesn't hold two people together. When the routine comes in, when work gets harder, when days get longer, and when words become fewer, something starts to crack. And we cracked slowly over time. At first, it was just little things. I'd come home late from work, and he'd already eaten. I'd ask about his day and get one-word answers. Then came the silences, not angry silences, just empty ones, like two strangers sitting in the same room scrolling on their phones, pretending not to notice the distance growing between them. And then came the fight, stupid ones about who forgot to buy eggs or why the dishes were still in the sink. But they weren't about eggs or dishes, they were about us, about how we stopped being us. I remember one night I was cooking and I asked him if he still loved me, and he didn't answer. He just nodded with his eyes on the TV, and that nod felt colder than anything I've ever felt. I wish I could say I tried harder. I wish I could say I fought for us, but I did not really. Instead, I became resentful. I stopped apologizing. I started blaming. And one night during a fight, I said something that even now I hate repeating. I looked him in the eye and said, "Maybe you're just like your father, a man who never knew how to love." And the second I said it, I knew I had crossed a line. Daniel's father had left when he was a teenager without a word, and that wound never healed, and I threw it in his face like a weapon. He didn't scream, he didn't cry, he just grabbed his keys and left, and I stood there in the kitchen alone, holding the knife I was using to cut carrots, not knowing that the silence that followed would be louder than any fight we ever had. I waited for him to call, I waited for him to come back. He didn't, and I didn't call either. I let my pride speak louder. For 2 whole days I convinced myself that he would be the one to apologize, but when I woke up on the 3rd day and his side of the bed was still untouched, reality hit me. He wasn't coming back, not unless I made the first move. So I swallowed my pride, packed a bag, and got into the car. I checked his GPS location. We had shared it months ago, and I saw he was at the mountain house. It made sense. It was a safe place away from everything, including me. I didn't think twice. I got on the road. I told myself I would apologize. I would own up to my words. I would fight for us. And during those 12 hours of driving through snow and endless gray skies, I remembered everything. The first time he held my hand, the way he used to dance with me in the kitchen even without music, the way he used to kiss my forehead and say I love you like a promise, not a habit. I played all of that on repeat in my head, thinking it would give me strength, and maybe if I remembered who we were, I could bring that back, and maybe, just maybe, he'd open the door and smile, and we'd hug and cry and laugh about how stupid we were and how love always wins. Maybe that's what I needed to believe to keep going. But I never expected what I actually found when I got there. I never expected the silence, the shoes, the jacket, or the message on the phone. I didn't know that love wasn't the only thing I would find in that house. And as I stood there in the doorway surrounded by the ghosts of what we used to be, I realized something: the story wasn't going to have the ending I rehearsed in my head, because something much darker, much deeper was waiting for me behind the next door. I started the engine sometime after midnight. The sky was dark, but not the usual kind of dark. It was the kind of dark that feels heavy, like the world is holding its breath. I didn't bring much, just my coat, my phone, a bottle of water, and a small bag. I didn't even check the weather. And I should have, because halfway through the trip the snow started falling, and it didn't stop. It was the kind of snow that blinds your windshield and swallows your headlights. And yet I kept driving mile after mile, holding the steering wheel like it was the only thing holding me together. The roads were empty, no cars, no signs of life. Just me, the storm, and the thoughts that wouldn't leave me alone. I thought about calling him on the way, maybe to say I'm coming, or maybe just to hear his voice. But something inside me said, no, wait until you see him, wait until it's real. I needed to see his eyes. I needed to say I'm sorry, looking at him, not through a screen. I rehearsed what I'd say. Again and again. Daniel, I was wrong. I crossed a line. I didn't mean it. You're nothing like your father. You love more deeply than anyone I know. And I was just angry, scared. I was scared of losing you. And now here I am driving through a blizzard, not knowing if I've already lost you completely. The irony didn't escape me. The one time I choose to fight for us, the universe throws a storm in my face. But I didn't turn back, not once, because deep down I believed that if I could just get to him, everything would be okay, or at least better. It had to be better. And as the hours passed and the night got darker, I started remembering all the moments that made me fall in love with him, like the way he used to tuck my hair behind my ear, or how he'd randomly leave post-it notes on the mirror saying things like, you got this, or I miss your laugh, or how on my birthday he made me pancakes shaped like hearts even though they looked like blobs. He said they were modern art, and we laughed until we cried. I missed those laughs. I missed as I past gas stations and old diners, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. I felt like if I stopped even for a minute, I'd lose the courage to keep going. So I pushed forward, watching the trees blur by, covered in white. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror and barely recognized myself. Tired eyes, lips pressed tight, like I was holding back the truth from even myself. And maybe I was, because somewhere deep in my gut, I knew this wouldn't be easy. This wasn't going to be a happy surprise. Maybe he wouldn't be there. Maybe he wouldn't even open the door, or maybe worse, maybe he'd already moved on. I shook that thought away and gripped the wheel harder. Focus. Just get there. The hours felt like days. My back hurt, my fingers were frozen, and I hadn't eaten. But none of that mattered, because the closer I got, the louder my heart pounded. And then finally, after what felt like forever, I saw the sign, the narrow road leading to our mountain house, winding through tall pine trees buried under snow. My tires crunched as I pulled, and slowly lights were off. Everything was still. I parked, turned off the engine, and just sat there for a minute listening to the silence, my breath fogging up the windows. My hand trembled as I reached for the door handle and stepped into the cold. The wind slapped my face, the snow soaked through my boots, but I didn't care. I was here. I climbed the wooden steps, each one creaking under my weight. My hand hovered over the doorknob. My mind raced. What if he wasn't alone? What if he didn't want me there? What if the damage was done and I was just showing up to bury a corpse of a relationship? I didn't have time to finish that thought, because I opened the door, and there they were, the shoes, the ones that didn't belong to him. And in that moment, everything, every single mile I had driven, twisted into something else. Not hope, not love, but a knot in my stomach that said, Mary, you are not welcome here. And suddenly the snowstorm outside seemed quieter than the storm that had just started inside me. I stared at the shoes, trying to convince myself they weren't real, that maybe I was imagining them, maybe I was tired, maybe they were just an old pair Daniel forgot he had. But I knew better. They were new, black, clean, stylish. Too stylish. Daniel hated shoes like that. He always wore those old hiking boots with the torn laces, even when I begged him to buy new ones. And right next to the shoes was a scarf. Not mine, not his, soft light blue with perfume I couldn't name, but it wasn't mine. And just like that, the cold from outside crawled into my bones. I closed the door slowly behind me and took a step forward. I didn't call his name this time. I didn't want to hear nothing again. I just listened. I heard the hum of the heater. I heard the ticking of the old clock on the wall. And I heard two voices from the hallway. One was Daniel's, low, tired, calm. The other was soft, higher pitched. I couldn't make out the words, but I heard them laugh, and my heart cracked in a way I can't explain. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, like paper tearing, like something sacred breaking in slow motion. I walked toward the voices. My steps were silent, my breathing shallow. I reached the hallway and stopped right before the corner. I peeked just enough to see, not enough to be seen. And there they were, Daniel sitting on the couch, leaning back like he belonged there, like he was home. And next to him was a woman, young, smiling, wearing a sweater I left in the closet months ago. She was barefoot, legs tucked under her body and her head tilted toward him like she had done it 1,000 times before. Daniel looked different, lighter, like the man I fell in love with before the silence, before the distance. And he laughed, really laughed, not the fake forced chuckles. I had gotten used to the kind of laugh that makes your eyes close for a second, and it felt like a slap, like I was watching someone else's life, someone else's love. I stepped back quietly, not because I was afraid they'd see me, but because I wasn't ready to accept what I just saw. I turned around, walked to the kitchen, sat on the cold stool, and stared at the counter where we used to make coffee together. And then I saw it, another cup, still warm, steam rising, the same brand I always bought. He hated it, said it was too strong, but he kept buying it because I loved it. And now there it was for her. I wanted to cry, scream, throw something, but I didn't. I just sat there like a ghost. And then I heard her footsteps coming toward the kitchen. I panicked, stood up, and backed into the pantry. And before I could even think, the door opened and she walked in, humming. And then she froze when she saw me. I'll never forget her face, the shock, the confusion, and then the guilt. She knew exactly who I was. I didn't need to say a word, and neither did she. She just stared at me with wide eyes and held her breath like I was a wild animal, and maybe I was. I felt like one. And then Daniel appeared behind her, and when he saw me, his face dropped, not angry, not surprised, just broken, like the one thing he was trying to avoid had just walked through the door. And I stood there waiting for him to say something, anything, and finally he spoke. Mary, what are you doing here? And that question hit me harder than any storm. 12 hours on the road, and that's what he asked. What am I doing here? Like I didn't belong, like I was the one invading. And she tried to speak, but he raised his hand gently, not angry, just tired, and told her to give us a moment. She left the room, and then it was just us standing in the kitchen, like strangers in a museum full of memories, and the silence between us said more than words ever could. I looked down at Daniel's phone lying on the counter, his thumb still hovering over the screen. It was unlocked, like an invitation, or maybe a trap. I knew I shouldn't look, but curiosity won over fear. I swiped through messages, and then I saw it, a new message from an unknown contact. The name was just a number, but the words stabbed me straight to the heart. It said, "I'm coming down, she won't suspect a thing." My hands trembled, and I scrolled back to see what this was about. The conversations were long, full of laughter, secrets, and plans, but not the kind of plans you want to hear about. They talked about me, about us, about what I didn't know. And then I saw pictures, photos of Daniel with a man, someone I recognized, someone from my past, my brother, the same brother I took in when no one else would, the same brother I fought to save from himself, the same brother I trusted with my life. And here they were, hidden away in texts, planning something behind my back. And for a moment, everything stopped. The room, the silence, my breath, and the betrayal felt like a stone sinking to the bottom of my soul. I wanted to scream at them, to run away from the lies, but I couldn't. I was frozen, stuck in a nightmare that I had never imagined. And then my phone buzzed in my pocket, breaking the spell. It was a message from my mom asking if I was okay, and all I could do was text back yes, knowing it was a lie. Daniel walked into the room, his eyes searching mine, but I avoided them. I couldn't trust him, not now, not with what I'd just discovered. I put the phone down and faced him. "Why?" I whispered, and he looked away. No answer came, just silence, and the weight of everything crashing down around me. And just like that, I realized this wasn't just a simple fight or a bad moment. This was a betrayal that cut deeper than any knife. And as the snow fell harder outside, I knew my life was about to change forever. I stayed hidden behind the kitchen door, my heart pounding so loud I thought they would hear it. Daniel and my brother were talking in the living room. I could hear their voices, low and calm, but then they started laughing, not the happy kind, but the kind of laugh that makes you feel small, like you don't belong, like you're the punchline of a cruel joke. I wanted to scream, "Stop it, why are you laughing when everything is breaking apart?" But I didn't. I just listened and cried. Inside, I thought about all the times I had trusted them, the nights I stayed up waiting for my brother to get better, the times I begged Daniel to be patient with him, and now here they were sharing jokes, secrets, and maybe even more things I didn't want to know. I felt like a ghost, a shadow in my own life, someone who was forgotten and replaced. In silence, I heard Daniel say, "She'll never find out about us. She's too wrapped up in her own world." And I hated them both with a fire I had never known before. How could they do this? How could they betray me like this? And yet I was still here, silent, watching my world fall apart piece by piece. I wanted to confront them, to scream and demand answers, but fear kept me still. I was scared of what I might find, scared of losing everything. I still held on to a small hope. Maybe they were lying, maybe it was all a mistake, but deep down I knew the truth, and it was more painful than I ever imagined. I stepped out of the shadows and into the room, my voice shaky but loud enough to break the silence. Daniel and my brother both froze. Their laughter stopped, their smiles vanished, and for a moment the air was thick, heavy with everything unsaid. I looked at Daniel. His eyes were wide and dark, like he was caught in a trap, and I saw the regret on my brother's face, like he knew this moment would come, but not how it would end. I said quietly, but with all the strength I had been driving for 12 hours to Say sorry to you, Daniel, not to catch you with him, not to find out the truth. I waited for him to say something, but all I got was silence. Then he finally spoke. Mary, what are you doing here? That question hit me like a punch, like I was the one who didn't belong, like I was the stranger breaking into their world. I told him I came because I loved him, because I was sorry, because I wanted to fix what we broke, but his words cut deeper than any apology. You never loved me. He said you were never really here. You were always somewhere else. And the man next to me looked at me like I was a stranger, like the sister he barely knew. My brother said it was never about me. It was about survival, about needing someone to lean on, someone who wouldn't judge him. But the betrayal wasn't just words, it was in their eyes, in the way they avoided looking at me, in the way they whispered when they thought I wasn't listening. And in that moment I realized this fight was bigger than us, bigger than love, bigger than mistakes. It was about truth and lies and the family I thought I knew falling apart around me. I stood there breathing hard, tears running down my face, and I knew that whatever happened next, nothing would ever be the same again. I didn't shout, I didn't cry out loud. Instead, I picked up my coat and walked to the door without looking back. Daniel called my name, but I kept walking, my heart heavy, but my mind clearer than ever. Before I went to the bathroom, and there it was, the small plastic stick, the test I had taken before I left the city, the 2 pink lines glowing like a secret promise. I left it on the sink and turned to go. I said softly, you can keep the house, the memories, the lies, but I'm taking this with me, this new life growing inside me, a life that didn't know about betrayal or pain or secrets. I felt a strange peace wash over me, like I was finally free from the past, from the hurt, from the people who chose to hurt me. I stepped outside into the cold snow falling around me, and for the first time in a long time I smiled, because I knew this was not the end, but the beginning of something new, something mine. And as I walked away from that house, from them, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders and the hope grow in my chest. This was my second chance. My story wasn't over, it was just starting. Months have passed since that night. The snow has melted, and so has some of the pain. I moved out of that cold house, found a small apartment in the city, a place that feels like mine, a space where I can breathe again. I started working again, doing small jobs, saving every penny I needed to find myself again. Without Daniel, without my brother, without the lies. I still think about them sometimes, the betrayal, the love, the loss, but I don't let it control me anymore. I learned that forgiveness isn't for them, it's for me to heal and move on. And then there's the baby, the little life growing inside me, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, new light can shine. I talk to my belly every day. I tell the baby stories about hope, about strength, about love that never gives up. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if Daniel or my brother will ever change or come back. But I know one thing, I am enough. And I will give this child a life full of truth and courage. Every day is a new chance to rebuild, to start over. And I want you to remember that too, sometimes losing everything means finding what really matters. And if you are listening right now, maybe you have your own battles, your own storms, but I promise if you keep going, if you keep believing, you will find your peace, your new beginning, just like I did. And that is the story of how, after driving 12 hours to apologize to my husband, I found something much bigger than I ever imagined. Thank you for listening. And if you felt something, please leave a comment below, share your story, and don't forget to like and subscribe, because there are many more stories waiting for you right here on this channel. And now on the screen you will see another video that might help you keep going. Click on it and keep watching. Until next time, stay strong and keep your heart open. So now that you know my story, I want to ask you, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you forgive? Would you stay? Or would you walk away? And what if you found out a secret like mine? Could you face it, or would you run away? I want to hear from you. Please leave your thoughts in the comments below, share your experiences, and don't forget to like and subscribe to help this channel grow and see more stories like mine. And now there's a video appearing on your screen that I think you will like, so click on it and keep watching. Thank you so much for being here, and until next time, take care and stay strong.